We've been told that fertility is a her problem, and it's about her hormones, her cycles, her eggs. But here's the truth. Fertility takes two. In this week's episode of Reproductive Rebel, we are cracking open the myth that reproductive health starts and ends with the womb. We're talking sperm health, male factor infertility, and why conception is a team sport, not a solo mission. If you are trying to conceive, walking the fertility journey, experiencing recurrent miscarriage, or simply want to understand your body better or your partner's body better, this is an episode you didn't know you needed. Hi, I'm Adrienne Irizarry. I'm an East Asian medicine practitioner who is passionate about women's health and helping women to live their best lives. My goal is to put you in the driver's seat of your health, offering holistic solutions for a symptom-free life. Statements made in this program are for educational purposes only and not intended as a substitution for medical consultation or advice. We do not claim to diagnose, treat, or cure any diseases. This podcast is inclusive and welcomes all gender identities. The focus of the program is on biological function, and we will use the term women throughout, but it is referencing physiological and social challenges for biology, not identity. Come as you are, I am happy you're here and welcome all performances of identity. I hope you find something helpful in this show. Welcome back to another episode of the Reproductive Rebel podcast. I am thrilled to be joined today by Gabriela Rosa. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I just fell in love with Gabriela, her energy, her research, her brilliant mind, all of these things when we had a chance to sit down and do a screening call. And I just knew that I had to have her on the show. So if you could share with our listeners who you are and what you do.
Sure. And the feeling is mutual. You know, I did many podcast interviews and it's really lovely to kind of meet a kindred soul. So thank you so much for having me here. I'm a fertility specialist. I'm trained as a naturopathic doctor, and I have been helping couples overcome infertility and recurrent miscarriage and failed treatments since 2001. And so it's been a long time now. I've had all shades of color hair in that time, mostly gray now. But you know, we go with what we have. And so basically the biggest thing for me is I've always been extremely passionate about agency and self-empowerment in the truest of terms, not in the way that it's overused today, but really in the way that it's so important to understand that your ability to acknowledge, understand what you are going through and what are the avenues that you can utilize to improve your circumstances and health in life in general has always been a driving force for me. So it's always been something that I'm not one to be told there's nothing you can do about something. I am of the opinion that there's always something you can do, whether you realize it or not. And I think that a lot of times in life, when we feel stuck, we feel that we are not able to move through, and hence the name of my website is Fertility Breakthrough, and breakthrough from the sense of moving through an obstacle. Because what happens so often is that when we feel stuck, the reason we feel stuck is because we've run out of ideas about what can actually help us move forward. And so the solution, and in fact, the only solution to that is knowledge, is asking questions, is learning, is figuring out, okay, what else could there be? Maybe, yes, I don't know right now. And I feel like I'm in a place of not, often when we're stuck, it's that whole thing of like, I don't know what I don't know. And so I often find when I feel like that I go and pick up a book. Like sometimes it's like some random, but like I'm reading Abraham Verghese's The Covenant of Water right now, which has nothing to do with anything that I've ever picked up before in my entire life. I have to say, like for the last 24 years, I've done several degrees and I've not given myself the time or the opportunity to read fiction. So this, and the reason that I picked this at this time in my life is really to go, you know what? I've focused so heavily and so much on all of these things that I've come to master and know. Let me go and discover things that I don't know. Let me go and kind of like figure out what else is there in this world. So that's kind of like in a nutshell, a little bit about who I am and my approach to life. I also decided about 3 years ago that I would start painting in watercolor because it was I couldn't draw a stick figure. So I thought, do I really want to go through this life knowing that I've never actually applied myself to be able to improve in an artistic endeavor? And I decided that the answer was no. So here we are, Adrienne.
I love this. So, just from that intro, those of you who follow the show for a while, you can see why she and I are kindred spirits, because I love that you watercolor, which I actually didn't know from our screening call. But, you were talking about this quest for knowing things when you don't know what you don't know. And that right there is exactly why my practice, Moon Essence, came into existence. It was birthed from my frustrations when I had been to all of the specialists and nobody had any concrete, tangible answers for me. They were like, oh, your test results are fine. His test results are fine. I have no idea why you keep miscarrying, but we can do IVF with ICSI. And I'm like, wait, hold on a second. Stop, pump the brakes. What is ICSI? Okay, you didn't explain this to me before you walked out the door. And two, how is IVF going to solve my problem? Because I'm getting pregnant. I'm just not staying pregnant. Like, This doesn't make any sense to me. So after I had a good ugly cry about it, I'm like, well, screw this. There has to be an answer to this. I totally agree with you. And I think I contributed to some of my mother's gray hairs because I was the why kid growing up. And I was like, why is this the way that it is? And she was just like, shh, all the time, right? So,
I understand. I understand what's going on with me.
Exactly. So that quest for why became such a big driving force. I'm like, if I'm asking these questions, other people are asking these questions. So I love that our paths crossed and that you're doing what you're doing, because there are so many places where women feel very much like their fertility is out of their control. And they think that they're getting answers, but the answers that they're getting are not as concrete as they would like it to be. And then they start doing the Dr. Google rabbit hole situation because they either didn't have enough time with their provider or they didn't feel like they got a concrete answer. And that lack of knowledge can not just make people mentally spiral out, but they feel very ungrounded and in some cases unsafe, because they're like, I thought I understood my body. I thought I understood this thing, but what am I missing? So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So when we go on these like deep dives and these quests for knowledge, sometimes in today's world, it's hard to tell what good sources are. But when our paths crossed, I was like, oh, like you're looking at fertility in a very similar way to me, in that there has to be a why something isn't happening. And that's a big part of what you're doing you've done in your past career, that you're currently doing in your graduate doctoral work that you're doing. And I'm really excited about the energy that you're bringing to the science and quantitative side of this work.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because I'm the kind of person who has always been incredibly independent. right? And very much like, I don't care what a man has to say. I'm just going to do what I think. I'm just going to like go with whatever it is that I feel is the path for me. But fertility is the place where we do depend on a man. And so this is where, at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, and mind you, I've had incredible respect for men. I think men are incredible and amazing, and I would not want to live without them. So I want to say that, right? And it's the reason that I said what I said is not so much because it's my mom. She brought me up like this: before you have a husband, have a career. So she was never, like us other girls were dreaming about the white veil and getting married and having a beautiful wedding dress. She's like, what is your degree going to be? Like, what is it that you are actually going to attain in terms of your education? So it was always that. And when I told my mom that I was getting married or that I wanted to have kids, she's like, no, don't do that. Like, don't do that. Like, just, you need to have your independence first. You need to be. So that was kind of like my growing up thing. And mind you, my parents have been married for like almost 50 years, right? But they have always had a separate bank account. My mom has always earned her own money. And so it was very much this kind of co-collaboration that I saw growing up with my parents. And at the same time, there was never a situation where my mom was submissive to my dad. The thing that happens in fertility is almost like that co-collaboration is so critical and often underutilized and not focused upon in the way that it really serves the couple going through infertility. Because even as you just said it, you said it exactly how it's correct, that everybody says it, which is women have a challenge through the fertility journey. And no, actually, it's a couple that has this challenge. And I think that the more that, and I don't say that to kind of point out any kind of wrong expressing on this. It's just that we all have this tendency to think that fertility is a woman's issue. And that because we gestate this child and it comes out through our own vaginas, typically. When I say this to my kids like when they're telling me that they want to do this and they want to do that, and I say no, and they say why, and I say because I said, and they say why, because you came out of my vagina. So just because.
I'm going to start using that. I like that.
I have two boys, right? They're 13 and 10. They are mortified. You know what I say? They literally want to like open a hole on the ground to jump in. And then, like, the other day, I don't know, we were in a restaurant somewhere and I'm just having a conversation. And I have a conversation in restaurants in the same way that I have a conversation anywhere. Like, whatever I'm going to say, I'm going to say. And so this conversation started, I was like, Mom, because he came out of my vagina, he's like, Mom, we are in a restaurant. Can you please lower your voice? Why do you have to say this? Because I cannot have a mouth.
Because it's true.
Exactly, because it's true. So anyway, I love to embarrass my children. So I apologize to you, lovely boys, at this point. One day, if you hear this podcast, I love you. Anyway, but in terms of fertility, we have to come back to this whole conversation of the fact that this is a couple's issue. This is a couple's consideration. This is a couple's situation. And nothing is more clear when we start to look at the real evidence about why miscarriages occur, why infertility occurs, why different presentations in terms of a woman's health and how it's affected by the sperm starts to show up, like things like recurrent pregnancy loss, like things like preeclampsia and live birth rates that drop, and all of these types of situations, and inability to conceive as well. Because you see, we think, and this is what we're told. I had a couple yesterday or the day before. I often do creation stories where I ask my patients to come and tell the story. And this couple, imagine this, they had been together and not using contraception for about 8 years before they decided that they were going to start trying. Okay. So they started trying, and it took them 6 years to go through 6 failed IUI cycles and 2 failed IVF cycles. Meanwhile, this woman is 35. Okay, so at the time that she's going through all of this, and the doctors are all telling her, you need donor egg. Your eggs are no good. This is, it's an issue with your eggs. So she's not happy with that idea of having donor egg at that stage and continues trying. By the time she's 40, she comes to me. After all of these years of failed attempts, of treatments that don't work, of all of these things. So we start to really dig deep into what's going on and what has gone on, what has made these steps that she was told were the solution to her problem fail. And so I start treating the couple, because in my clinic, we only treat both partners. And I start to investigate and look at, okay, what is going on? What's happening in here? Have we had these particular tests ruled out? Have we looked at the microbiome in the uterus? Have we looked at the sperm? Have we done cultures for potential silent infections? None of these things have been done. This couple is just being told it's an egg issue. You need donor egg. So as we start to go through all of this workup and we start to get results back, sure enough, she has a silent infection that ultimately will completely make implantation fail. So you've gone through all of these IUI cycles and these IVF cycles, and there is no chance in hell that you are going to actually see a positive pregnancy test with that kind of infection happening for her, which also, incidentally, will be happening for him, even though it's silent and it can't be expressed. But here's the thing. Despite her being told that she needs donor egg, sperm parameters were the minimum that we need to affect a natural conception is 20 million sperm in terms of count. When we did his semen analysis, he had 2 million. 2 million. 2 million.
Wow.
Now, the doctor literally failed to instruct him on the fact that he had sperm parameters that would never actually naturally affect pregnancy. They were not told this information. They were literally told, oh, it's okay. Like, yeah, it's okay. We'll just do IVF. It will bypass everything. IVF does not bypass anything, really, at the end of the day. When it has not been straightforward, when it hasn't happened and worked the very first time, already you can be sure that it's not bypassing your issue. Because if it was bypassing your issue, you would be pregnant first try. And even so, without actually really, most people don't actually need IVF. They are told to go down the IVF path because that's how their healthcare system is structured. And IVF is a multi-billion-dollar industry. I don't care who makes money, like throw people, make money, provide a service, add value to the world. That's fine. It's not about that. It's about the fact that it's not the best path and it keeps being perpetuated as if it is, despite the fact that it has a 70% failure rate per cycle. And still, it's considered gold standard. And I just go like, how is this even possible? Anyway, coming back to the story, this piece of information was very important because obviously we realized that, okay, we need to optimize sperm health because without it, and the fact that they both had this infection that is known to cause infertility and miscarriage, but nobody even tested to see if it was there, was clearly something that needed to be addressed. So, of course, we got them onto antibiotics. Both of them got treated. We obviously optimized sperm. And, of course, this infection also led to poor sperm quality and count.
Yep.
And so we addressed all of those issues. And guess what? They conceived naturally with her own eggs at 41.
Oh, I love that.
Now, did it happen as a miracle? No, it was a lot of work. It was a lot of focus and effort in understanding the problem first, in really getting the clarity about what are we actually dealing with, because this is another thing that I find most people, especially fertility specialists, don't do a good job at, which is to really understand. And the reason is it's not actually a doctor's fault that they don't do this. It's the way in which the healthcare system is structured. It's the misaligned incentives that occur within the healthcare system, especially in the US, Because when you have universal healthcare systems like in the UK, like in Canada, like in Australia, well, guess what? The government is not wanting to hand money over fist for people to do failed cycles. They have very tight and stringent guidelines to go, all right, what are the things that we're going to allow and not allow? What are the parameters that are going to be okay to go and do an IVF cycle? There's age cutoffs. There's all sorts of different types of things that come into the mix when the government is shelling out the money, right? But when it's the patient shelling out the money in a privatized healthcare system like the US, the doctors are so happy. In fact, the clinics are so happy that you do 10 cycles instead of 5 because, hey, it's more profitable that way, you see? And so there is a side of me that understands the fact that, but the individual doctors, usually they want the best for their patient. They want their patient to succeed. And also it's not good for them if the patient has to have 10 cycles and there's another doctor around the corner that's getting people pregnant in 5, like everybody's going to go there because it's perceived as a better quality service and better value, right? But this is the part where we need to step back and go, okay, to what degree is it really true that I need to go down the path of utter intervention like IVF, like ICSI, and or what is the place where there is a lot of room for improvement in terms of my own health, my own cells as a couple, because there is nothing further from the truth when you hear it starts with the egg. That is the absolute, utter, gracious amount of hogwash that I have ever heard. And it's been popularized because journalism and media it's a catchy tone, it's a catchy tune. But here's the thing. The egg and the sperm are an outcome. First of all, women are born with all the eggs we'll ever have. That maturation process takes a year. So a lot of people don't realize that from the primordial follicles that we're born with to primary follicles to then ovulatory follicles, literally each of those stages, those kind of 2 major stages happen in about 4 to 6 months each, which means that the egg that you are ovulating in this cycle has been recruited with a whole lot of others to actually be able to be released, but it started its maturation process about 10 to 12 months before. And so, yes, there are things that you can do that will improve the environment in which these eggs are maturing and that will optimize the amount of exposure they have to nutrients and to things that are going to help it form well and do all of the things that it needs to do. And it's not just nutrients. Mind you, there's been an amazing number of studies showing that zone 2 training, aerobic training, because of its improvement in overall mitochondria within the muscles, which our muscles have the most amount of mitochondria that helps to reduce inflammatory response within the body. Actually, it works much better to improve mitochondrial health and mitochondrial biogenesis by doing 45 minutes, 4 times a week, 3 to 4 times a week of zone 2 training, which is basically a type of cardiovascular training where you're activating a zone of kind of heart rate that essentially how you know you are in that zone is that you can still be exercising and you can still kind of speak in short sentences, but you prefer to not speak and you'd have your mouth closed and you're breathing through your nose. That, if you keep that up for 45 minutes, 3 to 4 times a week, your mitochondrial health, your inflammation, systemic inflammation, your ability for your body to utilize all its cells towards the best possible outcome that it will deliver in terms of your system is improved drastically. And there's so much research to show this. So it's going to be better even than CoQ10. Now, I'm not saying don't take your CoQ10. Take your CoQ10, but also understand that it's not going to be the only thing. And that also the egg is not the only thing. The egg is responsible for fixing the DNA fragmentation within the sperm. Now, what does that mean in practical terms? Well, basically, it means that we have to clean up for men way before they actually show up in this world. That's what it means. And that's why I teach my children, pick up your shirts from the floor, go and clean up the kitchen that you left a mess. But anyway, things that we mustn't know, but all jokes aside, what happens in terms of sperm and DNA fragmentation is that DNA fragmentation is one of the greatest factors as to why infertility occurs and essentially miscarriage occurs. There are studies that show, and I'll send you a couple of links to meta-analyses that have shown that if you have an increased DNA fragmentation in the sperm, and in the US, sometimes this is not even tested. Like, that's the thing that I just go, like, oh my God, like you actually have to pay privately to have your DNA fragmentation testing done. And there are some states that don't do it. And we know this because obviously I treat patients all over the world. The majority of my patients are in the US, UK, Australia. So it's very differential, the types of things that you get. But the reality of it is this: knowing the sperm count motility morphology is not enough when we're experiencing infertility, miscarriage, and failed treatments, because there are specific things that are going to happen that if you cannot see, and mind you, this becomes one of those things as well, that if you don't have access to testing, but you understand what are the things that are going to increase DNA fragmentation, which is an unhealthy diet, unhealthy lifestyle, drinking, smoking, anything that essentially I often say to patients, and I say this to female and male patients, if you want to improve your fertility, you need to act pregnant now to get pregnant later. And that means literally as a couple, you must do all of the things that if you were the one responsible for gestating that child and you were the one that was going to give birth, whether you're a woman or a man, and you knew that it was up to you to make that environment the best possible environment to raise the healthiest possible baby, that all of the things that you would start doing and all of the things that you would stop doing to create the healthiest possible baby are literally all the things that you need to start doing and stop doing way before a pregnancy is in place. So that applies to both. So if you want to improve your sperm parameters, if you want to improve the likelihood of having better DNA fragmentation scores, the way you are going to do it is acting pregnant now to get pregnant later, right? And of course, you are affecting the pregnancy here, but we know what I'm talking about, right? It's an analogy. Yeah. So, and the reason that's important is because when we have elevated DNA fragmentation, what ends up happening is that studies show that there's approximately a 2-fold increased risk in miscarriages and preeclampsia. So what does that mean? Is that if your DNA fragmentation is not where it needs to be, you're going to be double more likely to have your partner go through a miscarriage and or develop preeclampsia, which is lethal at the end of the day. You can die from preeclampsia. So if you are not providing the best possible sperm, you're actually putting your partner's life at risk. It's not as simple as just going, oh, it's going to be okay. She'll be right, as we say in Australia. It's like, no, she will not be right. Understand this. So, and then of course, there will also be that whole aspect of inability to conceive to begin with. Whether we're talking about IVF, ICSI, IUI, natural conception, poor DNA fragmentation is going to increase the risk of infertility. It's going to increase the risk of miscarriage. It's going to increase the risk of many other negative outcomes in terms of mother and baby. And so we do these things in advance. And sure, people who are experiencing difficulty as a couple are more likely to want to make improvements so that they can conceive. But this really is something that, as a general rule in the whole entire population, for us to see healthier children at the end of the day, it should be part of the culture in terms of like how we look at reproduction and fertility and creating healthy babies. I still get shocked when I had a couple of weeks ago who were sitting talking to me. Obviously, I do telehealth consultations. So, you know, you can be anywhere and we can be having a conversation as long as you can actually still hear me and I can hear you. And in this instance, this couple was sitting in a car smoking cigarettes. I started seeing like smoke kind of in front of the screen, and they were on my mobile phone, and I'm like, are you guys actually smoking? And they were like, yeah, we're smoking cigarettes. I said, in my mind, I was like, where do I even begin this conversation? Because this couple had been infertile for 7 years, 7 years. And they still didn't quite catch the information that smoking and long-standing infertility go hand in hand. And it's very likely a reason as to why this is happening. And, you can sit there and judge that and go, oh, yeah, okay, that's just bad, whatever. But then I looked at it deeper and I kind of went like, wow, what level of lack of access and information and understanding does one need to have to not put those two things together? And I realized that, and this is, I'm doing a doctorate in public health at Harvard, and we talk about the tenets of public health and the fact that access is not equal across the world and across populations. You would imagine, and this couple was in the USA, so you'd imagine that there would be a level of understanding, right, about these things being problematic. But it's a Western country, wealthy economy. We're not talking about Africa here. We're not talking about, and still, these people were seeking fertility treatment for being infertile for 7 years and smoking in a car. So that's where you kind of sometimes need to take personal responsibility for your own education and go, all right, let me go and understand here. What are all of the things that could possibly, not even to say that they are absolutely affecting me, but could possibly, imaginably affect my chances of having the healthiest quality egg and the healthiest quality sperm? Because I can tell you right now, if you are drinking, you're smoking, you're doing drugs, you're eating McDonald's several times a week or fast food or whatever, and you're not exercising and you're not taking care of your health overall, there is a lot you are leaving on the table. And there is a lot you can be doing to optimize fertility. And the interesting thing about this is, and this is an important point, is that sometimes what people don't realize is that we have this kind of like continuum threshold. So let's just say that optimum fertility is up here on top of my head, okay? And where somebody might be starting is kind of like mid-chest on me. I'm just kind of like pointing this out. If you're just hearing me, just kind of imagine it.
And now a word from our Reproductive Rebel sponsor, Embody Space. Your cycle holds wisdom, and the Embody Space cycle tracking app helps you unlock it. Track your cycle in the only fully encrypted app designed to protect your most sacred data. Get daily guidance tailored to every phase, from bleeding to blooming, with rituals, herbs, lifestyle tips, dietary support, and more. All tailored for your body's natural rhythms, because your body's story is yours alone. Embody Space, your private portal to cycle wisdom. Download now and reclaim your rhythm. And now, back to the show.
And so what happens is that optimum fertility on top of my head, you are where you are, which is inability to conceive, inability to keep a pregnancy to term. You don't necessarily, because sometimes people think like, oh my God, it's so much work for me to do all the things that are going to be required for me to reach optimum fertility. I don't know that I can do that. The reality is you don't probably even need to. You just need to start inching up to improvements that are incremental day to day, because you might get up to where my chin is, and that was enough to create a healthy baby. You didn't have to bridge the gap between where you are and optimum fertility, but you have to move from where you are, because clearly where you are is not yielding the result that you are looking for. And so we need to be smart like that and think, okay, I don't have my result. I don't have the thing that I want. So what else can I do? How else can I approach the situation?
I love this. Oh, there's so much good stuff here. One thing that I think it would be really important for our listeners to know, because we do, particularly in Western countries, have this mentality that fertility is the female, right? I have several clients that have varying degrees of engagement from their partners, and everything with their cycle looks like they should be able to conceive in the next cycle with absolutely no issue. And they either don't get pregnant or they have a recurring loss. And a lot of them, I encourage them to get a semen analysis because, like you said, if they're not even meeting the minimum count threshold, which I've had 2 sets of test results in the last few months where they lowered the threshold from 20 to 15.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
differential lab results. Yeah.
I was like,
which is ridiculous. I mean, look, if you look at what has happened in terms of the Danish study that shows that there was the count of sperm count decreased by half in a 50-year period. This is why they're continuing lowering the standard minimum, because men's sperm is declining in its count, because as a population, you see what happens with any kind of test result, and semen analysis are no different, especially depending on the lab that you go to. The reference ranges are actually extracted from the averages of men who come to that lab, typically. Now, there are international guidelines for semen analysis, which by WHO, the World Health Organization, are set at 20 million. But different labs might report differently based on what they are seeing for the people coming in. Now, remember that most people who are coming in for any kind of test, not just the semen analysis, are more likely to be sick, are more likely to be unwell in comparison to people who would be at optimum health, who typically are younger and don't have as many risk factors or exposures. And so what happens is that it's not so much about what is ideal, it's about what is being observed. It's like the epitome of mediocrity.
yes.
It's like, let's just lower our standard because we're not good enough. Like, and not that I want to make this about fertility or kind of sperm health as an aspect or a piece of masculinity, because it isn't. Like, actually, what the most masculine thing a man can do, as far as I'm concerned, is step up and actually go and do what it is that they need to do, which includes the semen analysis, which just includes looking at the results and staring it in the face and going, how am I going to improve this? That is the most masculine thing a man can do. So the reality of it is that if a man is too, oh my God, I don't want to see them. I don't want to go down and see the analysis because I don't want to see the results. It's like, grow the freaking hell up, man.
Yep.
Like, just like learn to be an adult, learn to take responsibility for your actions, learn to look at things as they are and go, right, where am I going to kick this door down? Because that is what is required. If you're experiencing infertility, miscarriage, crying in a corner is not going to actually get you anywhere.
Right.
What is going to get you somewhere is going, right, what are all of the obstacles? Because it's never just one thing. And people want to know the why. There is not one big why. Just know that. I've been doing this work for 25 years. I can tell you right now, there is no one big why. It's a combination of a whole bunch of things. And often those things compounded, they're usually very tiny. Like, we have population, like the database models, looking at the average time to pregnancy in the general population and essentially the impact of minor factors on those numbers. So the average time to pregnancy for a couple in the general population is 3 months. Literally, it's have sex, get pregnant, have a baby, done. We're no longer having this conversation. If we're still having this conversation, and that's at peak fertility, right? That's why you hear so many stories of people who are like, oh, whoops, I want to try and I got pregnant. Oh, I had a one-night stand and I got pregnant. Oh, like, whatever. Like, that just happens. If it hasn't happened for you, it's a different conversation entirely. And here's why. If you have just one minor factor, let's say slightly elevated DNA fragmentation will do it, or a sperm count that's not where it needs to be, or irregular cycles, or you name it, right? Just one of those things will take your time to pregnancy from 3 months to 2 years. So literally, you have just compounded the amount of time that is going to take to get pregnant. You add insulin resistance to that, or being slightly overweight and having slightly irregular cycles. Your average time to pregnancy has just increased from 2 years to 7 years. You add a third minor factor, and all of a sudden, we have an average of 40 years time to pregnancy. Nobody has 40 years to get pregnant, even if they start at 10. So, and we're talking about 1900s India here, the Abraham Vicky book that I'm reading. It was 1900, she was 12. She literally was being married off in an arranged marriage. So even then, right, you do not have 40 years to get pregnant. And it's so funny because in this book, like, this woman has had multiple miscarriages, and I'm just like, oh my God, I wish that I'd known these then. So anyway, but it's so breaks my heart reading the story, but I digress. So what happens is that we do need to look into what are all of the factors, what are all of the obstacles. The mission for me becomes, when I take on a couple, I'm not looking for what's great. I'm not looking for what's good even. I'm not even looking for what's normal. I'm looking for the slightly abnormal things and the entire list of all of them, so that I can prioritize and look at, okay, what is a consequence of something, and what is the cause, and where is the 20% of the effort that will give me 80% of my result? That's what I'm looking at. And so having developed this process over 25 years to really be able to see through the noise is essentially what enables our patients to overcome infertility, miscarriage, recurrent treatment failures with an incredibly highly reproducible rate of 78.8% live birth rate. But it doesn't happen from just looking at it and going, oh, your sperm is good. Yep, it's within normal range. Okay, great. What I'm looking at is, okay, what is not within normal range? What is not actually as ideal as it could be? Because again, I see people in all walks of life. And here's the thing that I know. The people who eat McDonald's 7 days a week and the people who have the crunchiest of organic, amazing diets, both still have fertility problems.
Yes, they do.
So exactly. And so what happens is, it's not lifestyle. It's not what you're eating. It's not that on its own. Understand this. And also understand that lifestyle optimization is not treatment. And that's one thing that sometimes a lot of people misunderstand, is that I'll have the crunchy people come to me and say, oh, I have a really healthy diet. I'm really healthy. I eat well. I exercise. Well, I'm great. That's wonderful. So clearly we need to understand what else is not going right, because you're not holding your baby. And then I have the people who eat McDonald's 7 days a week and they're like, oh, I ate a potato chip. That counts as a vegetable. Like, okay, well, maybe, but we also need to add some other things. And what I note of those two different types of situations is that improvement in the right direction, irrespective of where you're starting out, is the magic secret ingredient here. You don't have to get the 7 day a week McDonald's eater to eat like the crunchy person to conceive necessarily. Of course, improving and optimizing that is going to be improving the outcome. Of course, like, there is not even a question around it. But there is still flexibility towards the things that you prefer, the things that you value. And also understanding from a biochemical perspective, because like I said before, the egg and the sperm, they are an outcome of many biochemical chain reactions that precede it. Mm-hmm. That's why it doesn't start with the egg. That's why it doesn't start with the sperm. It doesn't even remotely start with your reproductive system. It actually starts with your overall health. That's really where it starts. And it's in optimizing that environment that the cells are actually maturing at and being formed at. That's where it begins. And for a pregnancy not only to be affected, created, but to continue to term, general health is where it's at. It's optimizing every other possible thing, because you can have the best egg and sperm looking under a microscope doing an IVF cycle and still end up with pregnancy loss at 15 weeks or less, or implantation failure, or like a chemical pregnancy or whatever, but no baby. right? After 10 attempts. It happens because we haven't addressed all of the other things. And here's the greatest difficulty that people have is in accepting the fact that you have not done all the tests. You have not done all the things. You have not done everything there was to do, because if you had, we would not be having this conversation. It's really that simple. Whatever the 2%, like you may have done 98% of everything there was to do in the world, but that 2% that you, one, don't recognize, two, haven't done, still means 100% no baby.
Yep.
And so it's in that place that we need to go and dig deeper and understand more and figure out what else and how else and who else is going to need to be looking at that, because it's the 2% that's keeping you 100% with no baby.
Yes. Oh, beautifully said, because I see this all the time. Like by the time people get to me, and I'm sure you experience this too, I feel like they go, well, I've tried everything. And I'm like, I witness you in feeling that way. However,
and the reason is, I'll tell you what, Adrienne, the reason that people feel that way is that ceiling that I was talking about earlier on, is the fact that they've run out of ideas of what else they could try. They've hit the ceiling of what they know. And so the answer lies in what they don't know, they don't know. But unless they get new, fresh input from somebody who actually knows, they're going to continue repeating more of the same, feeling like I've tried everything and nothing has worked. You haven't. You just have run out of ideas of what can, and you don't know what else to try. You don't know what else to do. And you may be exhausted, and you may actually be wanting to, like, you know what? I no longer want to have a baby. I don't want the thing that I wanted when I first started this journey. And that is valid, and that is totally fine. And changing your mind at any point, I endorse it. If you have been on this journey for 10 years and you go, you know what, I'm done with this shit. I don't want to do anymore. I don't want to even have, whatever, babies, I don't even care anymore. That's great. Acknowledge that for yourself. Decide what it is that you're going to do next with your life and be happy with that choice. It is not a necessity to have a baby to have a happy life. Like that is just really... That is so 1900s. So in this day and age, we can choose to not have children and still have a thriving and wonderful life. And, you know, that space that we would be giving to a child of our own, we can be giving to a whole lot of other people. We can be giving to other children if we want to. We can still experience that mothering or fathering in different ways. And so it's not to say that just because it came out of your vagina that you have to go through and do that thing. You can actually do that thing in so many other ways. And so that's really the biggest thing here, is that it's okay to know that you're done and make that decision and make that call and just like, that's it, right? Now, at the same time, I've had people come to me after 10 years of infertility, 15 years, 19 years was the longest standing case that I've treated. And those people were not done. They were like, you know what? I am exhausted. I am so angry. I'm so annoyed. I'm so frustrated. I'm all of these things, but I'm still not done. And so that is your responsibility to go, right, what else? How else? Who else? Because until you can look in the mirror and stare at yourself and say, I am done, you're not done. So get smart, go learn, go figure it out, go get advice of people who actually know, and like understand that there is work to be done. That's it.
If you're not done, but what if you're over 40?
Oh, that's a great question.
It's one I get a lot.
And here's the thing. Either you make a decision that you are going to make this happen, however it is. Like I had a conversation with a lady yesterday who's 45 and just started trying. And I asked her, I said, have you done any tests? Oh, yeah, I've done a couple of tests. Oh, do you know the results? Have you done your FSH? Have you done your MH? And she goes, yeah, no, I can pull it up right now. So we're having conversations. She pulls it up on her phone. She had no idea, right? And I said, so what was your AMH reading? And she goes, 0.01. I'm like, what's your FSH reading? 40.6. I'm like, So it will be me who will have to give this news in this moment, right? So I said, listen, here's the thing. And she was really kind of starting to get into that. Should I be worried? Should I be concerned? What should I said, listen, there's nothing for you to worry about here. And here's why. You have only just started, which means that this is either going to happen or it isn't. And so here's what you need to know. We've all heard of people who have reached menopause. And then I had a patient once come into a gynecologist appointment, and she's talking to me. She's like, I need to have a hysterectomy. My fibroids are playing up. It's been terrible. I'm just here to book in a hysterectomy. Comes out of the doctor's office, 7 months pregnant. 7 months pregnant. No wonder her fibroids were playing up. And they were playing up a lot inside this uterus. And she was like, oh my God. So she had no idea she was pregnant, 51. Who would have known anyway? Like, she had a 7-year-old. So she had a late pregnancy already. And then all of a sudden ended up with this kind of surprise. So I said to this woman, I said, listen, it's either going to happen and it's going to be like this, right? It just happens without you expecting it, or it isn't, in which case you then have a choice to make. Do you want to go and do donor egg and have a baby? Like, when you ask yourself honestly and you say, I will not go through this lifetime without having a baby, yes or no, right? What does your heart tell you? If it tells you that it's a yes to that statement, then your choice is to get over yourself and go do donor egg. Because unless you do that, if it hasn't happened, it's not gonna, right? And unless you do that, it definitely isn't going to happen. Therefore, that's your choice. And get over the thing that, oh, but it's somebody else's egg. An egg is a single cell. Let's just get this into perspective. It's a single cell. Without the sperm, it does absolutely nothing other than die. Without a gestational carrier for that embryo, who is going to provide the entire epigenetic environment for the development of that baby, who is going to provide all of the building blocks for that baby, who literally is going to build it from nothing other than a single cell. Let's put this into perspective and clarity. And you are the one responsible for raising it for the next 50 years. So guess what? It's your baby. Okay? It's your baby. You're paying its bills. It's your baby. And that's how big healthy people need to think about this. It's like, get over yourself. You know, like, oh, but it's not my... Stop it. It's coming out of your vagina. It's your baby.
You put all the work in.
Exactly. Yeah, like literally and figuratively.
So there's one more thing before I could just talk to you forever, and I love this, but I know that there's going to be somebody listening to this that goes, okay, you talked about the fact that there is a long development process for an egg, a whole year, right? What does that development process look like for male gametes?
Yeah, look, and here's the thing. Just because it takes a year for the egg to mature, it doesn't mean that you can't be making improvements in much shorter periods of time. Because here's the thing that most people don't understand. Every 4 months, every single one of your red blood cells is brand new. It literally did not exist 4 months prior. And so you are manufacturing your own blood throughout the entire time. And there are dying cells and there are kind of recreated cells. And that goes on and on. It's a similar process for male sperm. And in fact, it's a similar time frame for male sperm. That's why men are more likely to be able to be fertile for longer. We know that DNA fragmentation increases, sperm quality count, morphology, motility declines over time. After 45, we have more issues with sperm parameters than beforehand. DNA fragmentation increases a lot. One of the reasons why with a same age partner, if a man is 40 and a woman is 40, that is going to be a harder conception process if the sperm is not superhero than it would be if the sperm was better, because basically there are more errors. There is more work in that older sperm than there would be if the man was 20. Right? That's ladies, single ladies out there, take note who want to have a baby. But you see here, that is essentially how it happened. And the reverse is also true. If a man is going to be with a partner his age, the chances of getting pregnant is going to be less than if the woman is much younger. So that said, you can be improving and optimizing everything. Like I have lots of patients who are differential age gaps that are massive on both sides. I have people who are the same age, and it's all possible. It's just that you've got to figure out what are the levers for that specific situation and that specific case. But there's a lot of improvement that can be made in very short periods of time. And we don't want to, like, especially if somebody is older in terms of like over 42, 43, I'm not going to be stopping them from having conception attempts. I'm going to be quickly looking at what could be causing implantation failure and miscarriages, because a miscarriage can really rob a woman of fertility potential, particularly if we look at it from this perspective. Let's say that you have a miscarriage at 8 weeks. It takes another 8 weeks to get back to baseline so that one can try again. So that's 4 months. Let's say that person conceives relatively quickly, and we know that when people are having difficulty conceiving, 6 months is like flash, right? And so let's say they conceive quickly and they are pregnant again at the 10th month. Let's say another miscarriage happens at 8 weeks. Well, guess what? We're a year down the track and a year of fertility potential lost. Now, you have that repeat 3 times at 41, and you are most likely have run out of time to have a baby altogether with your own eggs, right? And so that's where, when somebody has been trying for a long time and they haven't seen a positive pregnancy test, the first place I go is recurrent miscarriage testing and look at immunological components and look at the entire matrix that we use for testing miscarriages. I go there because I know that the reason that you haven't seen a positive pregnancy test after 10 years of trying is, unless you have blocked fallopian tubes. If the tubes are clear and we have sperm, it's not because you haven't conceived. It's because there's either been fertilization failure, the sperm hasn't been strong enough to actually essentially penetrate the egg and fertilization failure has occurred, or implantation failure has occurred, which means that the egg and the sperm have met, that process has started, but it finished a week after it started, which means that a week later you're getting a period. So even though you were pregnant for about 10 days, you haven't seen a positive pregnancy test, and that can repeat itself hundreds of times, in a lifetime. And so basically, and we know that 3 out of 4 pregnancies end in miscarriage. So, it's a very common thing. It's not normal. Just because it's common does not mean it's normal. It's common. Okay. And so that's why we need to then look at, okay, what is the preceding information that we need to have about the fact that I haven't seen a positive pregnancy test? Is it really an infertility situation where the egg and the sperm are not meeting, or is it a miscarriage issue? And usually it's the second.
Yes, usually it is the second. Oh, I love this. Like I said, I could talk to you forever, but I want to be able to direct people to your approach to this kind of care, because you are the answer that a lot of people are looking for, ones that have had particularly recurrent miscarriages. And where can they find you?
So they can go to my website, which is fertilitybreakthrough.com, or they can Google me, Gabriela Rosa, Gabriela-Rosa. So Gabriela Rosa. But Fertility Breakthrough, if you can't spell that, just try. Google will help you. And also, if you Google Gabriela Rosa's Fertility Challenge, there's a couple of resources that I make available for free that I think really benefit people. One is I have a 4-week program that is completely free, that people can actually understand more about their fertility, more about what tests they need to be done, kind of just get those core baseline principles in place and in order when we're talking about optimizing fertility. And the second is my book, Fertility Breakthrough, which is obviously available on Amazon, but it's free on Spotify and YouTube. So people can literally just Google that and get access to the audio version.
Nice. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I love your energy, and you're truly another reproductive rebel, because you are not accepting the status quo. You are challenging and pushing that envelope, because women's health really does deserve better. And
Absolutely.
with epidemic levels of male infertility rates and challenges with gametes, I'm so glad that we were able to bring this conversation to the show. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you so much, Gabriela, for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. I had a lot of fun. And of course, ran way over time. I apologize, but I'm glad we had this conversation.
I think this is the kind of conversation and the kind of information that a lot of people are looking for. And I think it's exactly as it should be. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. And until next time, everybody.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of Reproductive Rebel. Reproductive Rebel is recorded by certified peri-steam hydrotherapist and acutonics practitioner, herbalist, and Chinese nutritional therapist, Adrienne Irizarry of Moon Essence LLC. If you are interested in setting up an appointment for one-on-one support, ordering from our store, or checking out our course offerings, visit our website at moonessence.life. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter and get insider information on upcoming events and offerings. Join the conversation. Like and follow us at Moon Essence Me on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Your voices make this program possible. Thank you all for your continued support.